The tea in my mug was still steaming when I heard my mother's whisper drift down the hallway. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was simply moving toward the kitchen, half asleep and barefoot, when her voice floated through the cracked door, soft, strained, and edged with something that made me pause. "Leela, sweetie, are you sure? She is your sister." Her tone carried that familiar blend of worry and reluctance, the same mixture she used whenever the topic was me. I stopped walking, instinctively pressing myself closer to the wall. It wasn't that I wanted to hear bad things, it was that I already knew they were coming. At this point, it felt like a storm cloud that followed me, always humming overhead. Then came my sister's voice, sharper, quicker, and heavy with fear disguised as frustration. "Mom, please. Don't do this right now. I'm begging you. I don't want her there. She'll embarrass me in front of his family." My chest tightened. Embarrass her. Me? My mother lowered her voice even more. But the words still reached me with painful clarity. "But why would she embarrass you? Arya is quiet." "She's not." "She's not like us?" Leela cut in, as if that explained everything. As if that sentence alone was a full biography of all my failures. The tea in my mug trembled. My fingers went cold around the handle. I knew those words already, in different forms. Spoken on different days, in different tones. But hearing them now, spoken so bluntly, with no attempt to hide them, felt like something inside me tilted. I waited for my mother to defend me, even a little. To say something like, "She's family," or "She deserves to be there." But instead, I heard a long sigh, the kind that meant surrender. "All right," my mother murmured, defeated. "We won't invite her." That was it. The decision sealed in one moment. I suddenly felt foolish standing there barefoot, holding a mug of tea like I was a guest in my own home. I didn't confront them. I didn't make a sound. I simply backed away down the hallway, every step slower than the last, as if the air had thickened around me. My bedroom door clicked shut behind me, but the conversation kept replaying in my head like a cruel echo chamber. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the tea. The steam had faded. The warmth I hoped to start my morning with was gone, replaced with a coldness that seeped into my bones. I wished I could say it didn't hurt, that this wasn't the first time something like this happened, but it never gets easier to learn you are unwanted. Not by strangers, not by acquaintances, and certainly not by your own sister. On the night of the engagement dinner, I watched the world celebrate without me. My phone lit up with photos, each one more polished than the last. My sister in a perfectly tailored dress, her fiancé grinning beside her, his parents smiling with practiced elegance. They all looked glossy, expensive, coordinated. A magazine-worthy family tableau. And my mother. She stood beside them, smiling like nothing was missing. Like I wasn't missing. I stared at those pictures until my eyes burned. I told myself it was fine, that I didn't even want to be there, that events like that weren't my thing. But there's a difference between choosing not to attend and being silently erased from the guest list, because someone believes you aren't good enough to stand beside them. I spent that evening alone in my room, editing photos on my laptop, trying to drown my thoughts in colors, light angles, anything but the hollow space in my chest. My art had always been my refuge. But even that night, I struggled to concentrate. Every soft laugh filtering from the living room downstairs felt like a reminder that joy was happening, somewhere I wasn't welcome. By the time the house finally went quiet, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying my sister's words over and over. "She'll embarrass me," as if my existence was something shameful. I didn't cry, though. I thought I would. Instead, something inside me hardened, not bitterness, not anger, just a quiet resolve. A promise to myself that one day they would see me, not as the girl who didn't belong, but as the one who built her own place in the world. I didn't know then how soon that day would come. I didn't know that life was preparing a kind of poetic justice for me. All I knew was the silence of that night, and the sting of being the sister they didn't want anyone to see. The email arrived on a gray Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky looked like it had forgotten how to be anything but dull. I was sitting at my small desk in my studio apartment, sorting through a folder of rejected photographs, trying to decide which ones I might salvage. My coffee had gone cold. My hair was a mess. I was very much the opposite of glamorous. And maybe that's why, at first, I thought the email was some kind of mistake. Dear Area Cole, we are pleased to inform you that your photograph, Resilience in Gold, has been selected as the cover piece for the upcoming issue of Visionary World magazine. I froze. I stared at the screen, reading the words once, twice, 3 times, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something more logical. But they didn't. They stayed exactly as they were, loud, proud, and real. My photograph, my name. The cover. The last time I felt my heart race like that was years ago, when I submitted my first piece to a local contest and received an honorable mention. This was nothing like that. This was bigger, brighter, unimaginable. My hands shook so much I nearly knocked my mug over. A laugh escaped me, half disbelief, half joy, tinged with something that felt like the softest form of vindication. After years of working quietly, hidden behind my lens, pouring myself into art no one in my own family cared to see, here was a moment that proved I wasn't invisible. For a moment, I imagined running to my mother with the news. I pictured her surprised smile, maybe even pride lighting up her eyes. I imagined my sister's shock, followed by forced enthusiasm. But the reality of the engagement dinner washed over me like cold water. I remembered the whispered decision that I wasn't welcome. That I wasn't family material. That I would embarrass them. The email's brightness dimmed, just a little. I didn't tell them. Not out of spite, but because their voices, those whispers I wasn't meant to hear, had left a mark deeper than I'd wanted to admit. Sharing this felt like handing them something fragile, something precious, something they hadn't earned the right to hold. The magazine released that Friday. I stared at the cover in the bookstore, holding the glossy issue in trembling hands. My photograph, captured during a sleepless night of experimenting with backlighting, sprawled across the front. The colors glowed. My name was printed neatly in the lower right corner. It looked unreal, like someone else's life. The cashier asked me to sign her copy. I almost cried right there. By Monday, my world shifted again. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from unknown numbers, congratulating me. Then came the call from a number so unfamiliar, I almost didn't answer. Something in me said I should. "Hello," I asked, cautiously. "Ems Cole." A smooth, assured voice replied. "This is Daniel Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Industries." I knew that name. Everyone in our city did. But I also knew it for a far simpler reason. He was my brother-in-law's boss. "I saw your magazine cover this morning," he continued. "Exceptional work. I had no idea Mark's wife was related to such talent. I'd like to discuss a potential exhibition partnership if you're open to it." I was stunned into silence. Daniel Hawthorne knew who I was. He liked my work. He wanted to collaborate. And, he added warmly, "I insist you attend our company's annual charity gala next week." As my personal guest, I managed a yes, barely, but my mind was reeling the entire time. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. An hour later, my phone erupted with calls. First from Leela, then Mark, then my mother. None of them had called after the magazine came out. Not one word of congratulations. But now that someone important had noticed me, now that their world was affected, Leela's voice was syrupy sweet when I finally picked up. "Aria, oh my God, why didn't you tell us about the cover? We're so proud of you. Seriously," Mom screamed when she saw it. A lie. A transparent one. Mark awkwardly chimed in about how his boss really loved my work and insisted I attend the gala. He sounded scared, frantic even. Only later did I learn what happened. Daniel had marched into Mark's office, magazine in hand, demanding to know why someone so talented wasn't at the family dinner. Asking pointedly what kind of family didn't support a member like that. I imagined my sister's face when Mark told her. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the forgotten one. I felt seen. And the irony of it all settled around me like a warm, steady flame. The kind that doesn't burn you. Just lights the truth you were always meant to stand in. The night of the gala felt surreal from the moment I stood before the mirror, adjusting the gold silk dress I had bought with trembling hands earlier that week. It wasn't expensive, not compared to the designer gowns I knew my sister wore, but it was beautiful in a way that felt natural on me. The fabric draped softly across my shoulders, catching the light every time I moved. I didn't look like the invisible girl hiding behind a camera. For once, I looked like someone who belonged somewhere grand. But that wasn't why I went. I didn't step into that ballroom to make my sister jealous, or to prove anything to my mother. I went because someone saw my worth without needing to be convinced. Someone powerful enough that my family suddenly found their voices again. And part of me wanted to meet that version of myself. The one who wasn't an afterthought. The one who deserved to be in the room. When I arrived at the towering glass building, there were photographers outside snapping pictures of guests as they stepped onto the carpet. I didn't expect any attention, but a few cameras turned toward me anyway. The flashes startled me at first, then warmed me. For years I'd been the one behind the lens. Now, for a moment, I was the subject. Inside, the gala looked like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across the room, like fragments of stars. Tables draped in black satin shimmered with gold trim. Soft orchestral music played from the corner, the melody weaving through the laughter and clinking glasses. People in elegant attire filled the space, their conversations rising and falling like waves. For a split second, I wondered if I would regret coming, if I would freeze or look lost, or prove my sister right in some twisted way. Then Daniel Hawthorne himself walked toward me with an expression of genuine warmth. "Aria," he said, offering his hand. "I'm so glad you came. You look absolutely stunning." I managed a smile and shook his hand. "Thank you for inviting me." "No," he said firmly. "Thank you for sharing your talent with the world. Your work is exceptional." His praise settled over me with a warmth that felt honest, earned, and long overdue. Over his shoulder, I saw Leela and Mark approaching. My sister's smile was stretched too wide, her eyes too bright, like she had spent the entire day practicing how to look like someone who wasn't terrified. "Aria," she exclaimed, hugging me with forced enthusiasm. "You look gorgeous." "Doesn't she look gorgeous, Mark?" Mark nodded far too quickly. "Yeah, amazing. Really amazing." I gave them a polite smile, neither cold nor warm, just neutral. The kind of smile you give strangers. "That dress is beautiful," my sister added, her voice soft but strained. "Where'd you get it?" Daniel cut in smoothly before I could answer. "Are these your family members?" "Oh, yes, this is my sister," Leela said quickly, reminding him as if she needed to claim the connection. "And my husband, Mark." Daniel nodded, then turned back to me. "I've been telling Aria we should arrange a gallery exhibition together. Her cover piece is one of the most striking images I've seen in years." My sister's expression froze. She blinked, swallowed, and forced yet another smile. "That's amazing. Really amazing." But the mask slipped. Just for a second. A tiny flicker of envy, bright and naked in her eyes. For years, I had always been the one standing slightly behind her in photos. The quieter one. The one people forgot to introduce. The one dressed in something too plain, too simple, too different. Now she was the one standing behind me. Throughout the night, people drifted toward me, asking about my work, complimenting my photograph, discussing the emotions behind my imagery. I found myself talking more than I expected, my voice steady, my confidence growing with each conversation. I saw my mother in the crowd at one point, watching with a troubled expression. Part confusion, part regret. During the charity auction, when Daniel mentioned me by name and thanked me publicly for reminding the world of the power of honest art, I felt a swell of something I hadn't felt in years, pride untainted by apology. My sister clapped along with everyone else, but her hands moved slowly, like each clap cost her something precious. She didn't look at me during the applause. She stared straight ahead, jaw tight. By the end of the evening, the tables had turned in a way I hadn't anticipated. Not dramatically, not cruelly, but quietly. Elegantly. The version of me they tried to hide, the one they dismissed, the one they thought would embarrass them, was now the one people sought out. It wasn't vengeance. It wasn't spite. It was validation, soft, steady, undeniable. And while I didn't come to the gala for revenge, the sweetness of the moment settled deep inside me like honey. The applause from the auction still echoed faintly in the ballroom when dinner was served, and the guests began to settle into their seats. I found myself placed at the main table, right beside Daniel Hawthorne, who had insisted I sit with him. My sister and Mark were seated a few spots down. Close enough to hear every word, but not close enough to interrupt. I could feel Leela's gaze flicking toward me every few seconds, sharp and restless. Like she couldn't decide whether she was proud or threatened. The dinner conversation flowed easily. Daniel talked to me about art, about inspiration, about the strange way creativity often grew in the cracks people didn't see. I told him about my process, hesitantly at first, then with a growing steadiness as I realized he genuinely cared. With each sentence, I felt more like someone stepping into her own skin, rather than hiding behind it. Halfway through the evening, as dessert was served, Daniel leaned back in his chair and addressed the table with a cheerful tone. "You know," he said, gesturing toward me. When Mark told me his wife's sister was the black sheep of the family, I thought he meant someone rebellious, outrageous, maybe a little wild. But Arya, he laughed, shaking his head. She's the most humble, talented person I've met all year. The words hit the table like a dropped glass. The clatter of cutlery stopped. The background chatter of nearby tables faded. Even the orchestra seemed to soften. I felt my heart stutter, the air around me tightening. Leela's face drained of color. Mark's eyes widened. My mother, seated further down, covered her mouth with one trembling hand. Daniel, blissfully unaware of what he'd just unleashed, continued. Honestly, it shocked me when he said her own family didn't bring her to important events. Seems like a missed opportunity if you ask me. Silence wrapped the table like a heavy blanket. My sister's voice finally broke through, strained and trembling. "Mark, you said that." Mark stammered, turning red. I didn't mean it like that. Daniel asked why she wasn't. Oh, come on. Daniel chuckled. Misreading everything. You practically said she wasn't family material. But look at her now. If anything, the rest of us should be trying to keep up. Another blow. A quiet gasp came from someone behind me. My sister looked like she'd been struck. Her perfectly lined eyes glistened with humiliation, anger, maybe even fear. She turned toward me, her voice breaking. "Arya, I didn't know I would never call you that." I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to curl into myself, to retreat the way I always had when they said things about me behind my back. But another part, the part that had grown stronger in the last few weeks, told me to stand still, to hold the truth without shrinking under it. I set my fork down gently, the sound small but crisp in the silence. Then I looked straight at my sister. "You don't have to explain," I said softly. "I heard you both loud and clear before the dinner. It wasn't just him." Leela flinched as if the memory physically struck her. My voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It carried a calm clarity that made the moment even heavier. "You were worried I'd embarrass you. So you hid me. Both of you did. You didn't need Mark to convince you." My mother made a quiet sound of regret, but she didn't speak. Not yet. Daniel finally realized something was wrong. Did I misunderstand? I shook my head. "No, you didn't misunderstand." And that was that. For a moment, nobody moved. The truth lay there on the table, plain, undeniable, exposed under the chandelier's light. Then Daniel cleared his throat awkwardly and changed the subject, giving the room a chance to breathe again. The conversations resumed gradually, but the mood at our table never recovered. The air stayed brittle, fragile, sharp, edged. Later, when the gala began to wind down, Leela approached me near the balcony doors. The cool night breeze drifted in, carrying faint music from the orchestra inside. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Arya," she whispered. I didn't think they would judge me if you came. I thought they'd judge you. And I thought that would look bad on me." Her honesty was clumsy, painful, and too late. "You didn't have to hide me," I said gently. "You just chose to." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't try to defend herself. Maybe she finally understood where the real shame belonged. "I'm sorry," she breathed. I nodded, not with forgiveness, but with finality. "I don't need you to be," I replied. "I'm not living in your shadow anymore. And that's enough for me." She swallowed hard, and for the first time in our lives, she looked at me not as the quiet sister, not as the awkward one, not as the embarrassment she feared, but as someone she was afraid of losing. I walked away before she could say anything else, stepping out into the night air. The last notes of music fading behind me, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't the black sheep. I wasn't the outsider. I wasn't the embarrassment. I was the one who rose, quietly, steadily, undeniably. And for the first time, my sister understood. I didn't need their approval. They needed mine.